Well, good morning and welcome to Laketon Bethel. It's always good to be a part of this church. My name is Sherwin Branson. I'm the pastor here, and I'm actually not in Laketon Bethel this morning. I am delivering this remotely from Sioux Center, Iowa. I went to Sioux Center to see my mother, who's in a adult care facility, and she's doing quite well. She's 88 years old, and she'll probably be watching this, so hi, Mom. The reason that I'm here is to see her, and I thought, well, I'm just going to do a remote message to all of you from the cab of a very large John Deere tractor. You can see from the slide that this is definitely a very big tractor. It's a lot of fun to do this. I spent most of my growing up years on either John Deeres or Farmalls, and I thought, well, I've never delivered any teaching from a John Deere. So today we're going to do that. Maybe we'll call this one the John Deere Attitude. I am parked in this tractor with a large manure spreader behind it in front of the house that Diane grew up in, and you can see that house in the slide. It's kind of a unique place, and I'm very happy to be here today. Now, what I was planning on talking about is something that I've been hearing about from many of you over the last few months. And that is a sense of frustration with a lack of personal growth, which is always good music to a pastor's ears. There's a frustration with a lack of spiritual growth. And so I'm working on developing, which will come out in the worship services too, a direction of spiritual formation and faith development, and I'll probably be starting a Wednesday night group geared specifically for that. Now, one of the strange things that I've learned about spiritual formation, about faith development, about growing as a Christian, about changing attitudes, about things like that, is it might be just as easy as changing your clothes. Now, when I was a kid, and the reason I've chosen this particular location today is that when I was a kid, I hauled a lot of manure. But I didn't do it with a monstrous tractor like this, or even with a tractor that had an encased cab on it like this. I sat out in nature, and the manure spreader spread the manure behind me. Sometimes if the wind was behind me, I got covered in it. And that was, of course, somewhat unpleasant. And I picked that up. Now you can see from some of these pictures where that took place. The slide that's up right now is the barn that my grandfather built sometime in the 30s. And I hauled a lot of manure out of that barn. Now when we do this, we of course get covered in it. And then we had to change our clothes before we could come into the house. So there was a mud room attached to the garage. And this slide is of what that mudroom looks like today. Now, it's currently inhabited by about a dozen Rottweiler puppies, because my brother is growing puppies in his garage and in that room now. But this is where we had to change our clothes to come into the house. We had to take off the dirty clothes and put on cleaner clothes in order to be admitted to my mom's table. Now, I'm thinking, and especially according to the book of Ephesians in the New Testament, that you can change your thoughts and you can change your attitudes just as easily as you can change your clothes. These are things that you can control. See, you control your attitude every day with every project, everything that comes up during the day. You control that attitude that you have. There's many things that we can't control. When I was driving out here, I saw some people riding horses, and that also brought me back a lot of childhood memories. But one of the things that I learned is that you can only control the horse that you're riding, and sometimes that's even difficult. You can't control other people's horses. You can't control other people. There's two things that you can control. Two horses that you have that you can control. One is your attitude and the other is your thoughts. We're going to look at this passage from Ephesians and see that that's true. Because you will have a better life, a much happier life, if you let God's Holy Spirit help you control your attitudes and your thoughts. Paul assumes when he writes this that you've heard of Jesus. He says, since you've heard about Jesus, this is verse 21, and have learned the truth that comes from him, it means his teaching, his life, his Jesus turning of the world's values upside down, his giving you basic salvation so that when you trust him, he saves you. And then he only gives you one rule, and that rule is to love others as you love yourself. Treat others the way you want to be treated. Matthew 7, verse 12. And then he goes on, he says, if you want to do this, you just need to throw off the old clothes. Get rid of the dirty clothes. Verse 21 continues. I'll repeat. Since you have heard about Jesus and have learned the truth that comes from him, throw off your old sinful nature and your former way of life, which is corrupted by lust and deception. Now here he talks about our selfish nature. Well, we all have it. I see it in myself every day. I see it in everybody every day. And that selfish nature is corrupted by lust. And lust is not limited merely to physical desires. It's a lust that says, I want to have more than what you have. I want a bigger John Deere than what you have. I want a bigger pickup than what you have. I want a bigger farm than what you have. I want a bigger bank account than you have. I want bigger and better than everything else that the person next to you has. And this sinful nature, this former way of life, he says, is corrupted by lust and also corrupted by deception. A lack of honesty, which prevails in many of our lives. Now, a life like this is annoying if all you have to live for is getting more. It's just nauseating. And a life of deception is stressful because you never know when you're going to get found out. And it's boring. It's tedious. And what Paul says, with God's help, throw that off. Get rid of it. Let the Spirit dress you, he says. So you take off your old nasty sinful nature and then let the Spirit dress you. Verse 23, he says this, instead, let the Spirit renew your thoughts and attitudes. Put on your new nature, created to be like God, truly righteous and holy. Now that's the passive part of this. There's an active part and there's a passive part of this kind of renewal. The passive part is this: let the Spirit renew your thoughts, which is done through prayer, it's done through meditation, it's done through praying to God and thinking about Him. Ask Him to speak to you. Ask Him to renew your thoughts and your attitudes. And you'll be amazed at how He does this. I do this all the time, and it's been working for a long time. When I prepare for a Sunday morning worship service, I ask God, what thoughts and attitudes do you want me to have? Do you want me to encourage people? Do you want me to teach something new about the New Testament? What is it you want me to do with this worship service that I'm going to lead? When I go to a board meeting, a consistory meeting, I'll ask the same thing. Lord, what kind of attitude do you want me to have going into this? What do you want me to do with this meeting that you've given me to lead? How do I do this best? With what kind of attitude? When I make a hospital call, and finally I can make hospital calls again because many of the COVID restrictions are lifted. When I go make a hospital call, I ask the same thing. Lord, what do you want me to do here? Do you want me to go into this hospital room and just waste some time? Or do you want me to invite these people into a time of prayer and pray with them and encourage them and seek the Lord's will for their healing? What is it you want me to do? And the answer is always clear. For a counseling session, the same thing works. People will come to see me and they're hurting. They've got big problems they want to solve. What attitude should I have? Should I have the attitude of, how can I get this done the quickest and get back to doing what I want to do? Or do I say, this is a wonderful opportunity for me to try to help someone? What attitude do I need to have going into it? And the answer is always clear. And this applies to everything in life. It applies to how we drive. It applies to casual conversations. It applies to our marriages. What attitude do you think that God would like to give you towards your marriage? That's what Paul is saying here. Let the Holy Spirit renew your thoughts and attitudes. This applies to every situation. Let the Spirit dress you in new thoughts and attitudes, and watch your behavior make a positive change. The behavior change is the active part. Letting the Spirit renew your thoughts and attitudes is the passive part. That's something you let Him do to you. Here's what you have to do, or what you can do, to make sure this is played out in real life. All right. I think this behavior change kind of goes like this. You take off the old nature, just like I took off my dirty clothes in that mudroom, and then you let the Spirit lay out for you what you're going to wear. You put the new clothes that the Spirit's laid out for you on, and then you go on your way. Paul gets very specific about what this looks like. He tells us specific things to do. He tells us what this new nature looks like. He jumps right from letting the Spirit change your clothes. He jumps into specifics. He says this in verse 25. So stop telling lies. Let's tell our neighbors the truth, for we're all parts of the same body. Now, stop telling lies. Come on, Paul. You can just as well tell humans to stop breathing, because all humans lie. That's just a fact of human nature. Someone once said to me, "Are you calling me a liar?" And I said, "No, I'm calling you a human, and humans lie." Now, I don't think what Paul is talking about here is the normal embellishments that we all do when we get excited and we're telling a story about something, and we tend to embellish it a little bit, add on to it. I don't think he's talking about the normal exaggerations that we all use from time to time. It's probably because we have memory lapses and we just don't remember all the details accurately. So naturally we change things to make it look favorable to us. I think he's contrasting the deliberate, selfish deception with being a fiction writer, somebody who just tells a good story. When you deliberately deceive somebody to get what you want, I think that's what he's talking about here. The manipulations that we often put into place. He's saying stop that if you want your attitude renewed, if you want to live a happier life. Because the lies always drag the liar into a deep hole. That's what falsehoods do. So then, after he's done mentioning this about lies, he talks about anger. And he says, and don't sin by letting anger control you. Don't let the sun go down while you're still angry, for anger gives a foothold to the devil. What he means here is, well, it's best to not get mad. But if you do get mad, don't stay mad, because that gives the devil a foothold. If you're angry, you're not thinking right. So renew your thoughts and attitudes regarding anger. Avoid it. It's your choice to be angry. Choose a better way. And then he says, if you are a thief, quit stealing. Instead, use your hands for good hard work, and then give generously to others in need. Stop stealing. A relatively easy thing to do. I'm always so surprised how common theft is. Recently, I thought I was buying something from Lowe's online. It was called a flash ad. Turns out it wasn't Lowe. I paid for it online, and I'm just out of the money now. I call it tuition. And I'm surprised how many people try to steal from you online. And people steal from the church. Maybe they're just borrowing stuff and forget to return it, but we see it all the time. People steal from their families. People steal from their employers. But one of the things I've learned is you might not get caught stealing, but you'll never get by with it because of the damage it does to your soul. Instead, work hard. If you're not working your optimum, you're stealing from God. Work as much as you can and give as much as you can, is what Paul is talking about here. I want folks to do this so that you have better decisions and make fewer regrets. So put on the new clothes that God has available for you. Renew your thoughts and attitudes by God's Holy Spirit. Invite Him daily to make this change in you. You'll feel better, and you'll have a much better outlook on life. You'll make better decisions, and you'll have fewer regrets. When this pandemic started, I used a story that happened about 10 miles or so, 10, 12 miles from here, about chickens. We had about 300 free-range chickens in those days, and whenever a thunderstorm came through, the chickens panicked. They all crowded into a corner in the building. And some of the chickens didn't survive. There's always 2 or 3 that didn't survive that because they would get crowded and trampled and whatnot. Now, the thunderstorm didn't kill the chickens, but it was their reaction to it that did. So often in this life, it's our reaction that does us damage. When you let the Holy Spirit renew your thoughts and attitudes, you'll respond better to any storm that comes to your way, any storm that comes in your life. And the storms are still going to come, but you will survive them much better. So throw off your old clothes and let the Spirit dress you with new thoughts and attitudes. And as always, thanks for listening.